Hey folks, hello and welcome back. This is part 4 of our Schuylkill Navigation System journey, I guess you could say, where we've been walking the towpath from exit lock 25 and we're making our way towards Port Clinton, Pennsylvania. In the previous video, we were walking along what is known as mile 18, or the section of slack water created by Hummel's Dam. So this is Hummel's Dam right up here, and right there was guard lock 26. So now what we're going to do is follow what is now Hummel's Canal. The Schuylkill Navigation System had many different sections of canal along with many sections of slack water, and each section of canal had its own name. So the section of canal that was north of us between Tom Lord's Dam and exit lock 25 was known as Lord's Canal. Now we've just passed Dam 15, also known as Hummel's Dam, and guard lock 26. We're now in Hummel's Canal. This is the actual towpath right here. And then this all filled in area right here, that's our canal. Now remember, this has been abandoned since roughly 1877. So that's 150 years of flooding and neglect and silt filling in, possible dredging of the river for silt and dumping into canal areas. I know that took place in some areas, not certain if it was here. But this section right here would actually be canal. This would be known as Hummel's Canal. So as I've mentioned in previous videos, the Schuylkill Navigation System was incorporated in 1815, and construction began around 1820, with the official opening coming in May of 1825. We actually have some stone right here. It looks like it could be, this is interesting. Could be a retaining wall. Makes sense. All right, a little bit about the navigation system itself. Ran between Port Carbon, Pennsylvania, to our north in the Pottsville area, to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with a length of 108.23 miles. Real quick, this over here, this berm, I believe is kind of like levee or retaining wall against the river, because this is our canal bed right here, as you can see. It would have been much deeper. It hasn't been dredged in a very, very long time, but I just wanted to point that out. That's also flat and walkable over. That's actually part of the trail that we're on. So with a length of 108.23 miles, and it opened in May of 1825, as I already mentioned. So this is the good stuff here. It was made up of 18 dams. Okay, so 18 different dams between Philadelphia and Port Carbon created the water system needed to operate the canal. There were 23 canal sections. As I mentioned, we just came from the area of Lord's Canal, and we are now walking the towpath next to Hummel's Canal. Again, that is right over here. This is the canal. You can go walk in the canal if you want. We are now in the actual Schuylkill Canal Prism. So as I mentioned, there were 23 sections of canal, this being one of them, Hummel's. And that made up a length of 57.73 miles of canalized navigable waterways. You know what, I think we're gonna go up here. The towpath gets a little dicey. So I'm gonna go up the way that I know we can get back to where we're heading to. So this would not have been underwater because there would have been no dam in this area. This is pretty much, okay, it's not anything like what it would have looked like 200 years ago, but I don't believe it's been altered by man in any significant way. So what you're seeing is just the creation of the river itself over the past 200 years from when the canal was first built until now. That might have sounded really goofy. Basically what I'm saying is I don't think the river's ever been really disturbed through here, except for natural flooding, of course. Where did I leave off? So again, let me start over with this. So as of the original 1825 opening, the canal consisted of 108.23 miles, 18 dams, 23 canal sections, covering 57.73 miles. There were 120 locks when first built, 17 stone aqueducts, and a 450-foot tunnel, which is back in Auburn, Pennsylvania. Well, it's kind of between Auburn and Landingville. It's not there anymore. It was daylighted a long time ago. But it was neat because they kind of built it as a novelty to get people to come up the canal. And it was kind of like the love tunnel. And I guess this would be enticing to folks in the Philadelphia area or anywhere else, because this is quite a novelty for the times. A tunnel, and you can go through it on the canal boat. It's literally what the Tunnel of Love amusement park ride, you could say, was built upon, is canal boat going through a tunnel. So yes, there was a tunnel along the Schuylkill Canal at one point. There were 50.50 miles of slack water, which is when the river itself is pulled and there's no canal. It's just the actual river, and the boats are on the actual river. It's just deeper because there's dams. And there were 31 houses for tolls and for lock tenders. That was all 1825. So in 1846, there was a rebuild. There was a doubling of certain locks. And then a lot of the locks were renumbered 1 through 72, because I guess when they rebuilt the canal, a lot of entrance locks that had lift to them became just guard locks where there was no lift. You were essentially just kind of sailing into it off the river, and you were even with the water around you. You didn't have to change waters at that particular lock. So let's say where we just were two sections ago at the section of Tom Lord's Canal. The original build, that would have been locks 24 and 25. After the rebuild, it just became a guard lock for Tom Lord's Dam. I hope that made sense. So we're coming into Port Clinton now, and what's really cool is Port Clinton is observing the fact that they have this great piece of history here, and they cleared out a couple of the locks, well, the exit lock in their area, and they have just recently installed a plaque, you know, dedicating, hey, this is what this is, and it says this is the Canal Lock 27 Schuylkill Navigation. Well, I'll show you when we get there. But we're approaching Port Clinton, so it's a cool spot. Now the towpath would have been over here. We got off the towpath because it's now becoming private property. The section that we are on is not private property, and I believe at some point in the 80s they tried to make this, or did make this, an actual recreation area that kind of fell into disrepair over the years. Maybe they're going to try to revitalize it again. But as you can see, this trail in front of us is used quite a bit. This isn't some out of the way place. But I've never seen anybody really highlight it before. I thought I would take advantage of that. All right, so before we get into the good stuff, you can kind of see 200 years later across the river, that is the Reading and Northern. So the Reading and Northern still operates on the Philadelphia and Reading main line. And what do they still haul? They still haul anthracite. Reading and Northern's actually the nation, if not the world's largest anthracite coal hauler. Now granted, yes, you can only get anthracite from this area, so they have an advantage there. But still, anthracite, although it isn't what it was 100 years ago, 200 years ago, it's still around. It's still being used, still being mined. New breakers being built, or a new breaker was built recently up in the Minersville area. And I mean within my lifetime, which most coal things have gone away in my lifetime. So that's kind of neat that that's happening up there. So as you know, 200 years after the fact, anthracite is still used. All right, so again, this is Hummel's Canal. We have some stonework over here, but we're actually going to be coming up on outlet lock 27, and I believe this may have been one of those double chambered locks. You'll have to judge for yourself when we get there. But they've recently just cleaned up this lock. It was covered in some debris the last time I was out here. And with the anniversary coming up and the dedication plaque, they decided to clean up the area a little bit. So thank you, Borough of Port Clinton, for doing that. All right, here we go. Some good remains here. And Deb, if you're watching, you mentioned something about the different stones used. This may be a really good example right here. So we have our first lock, and it's very interesting, the stone used for this. Yeah, this is a little janky. Let's go around the other side. So these stones obviously quite recognizable, but it appears like the inside of this is made with sandstone, and it almost looks like it could have been done recently. Like the stone has that, it kind of has a modern look to it. So again, this is the area of outlet lock 27, and what would have been creating the slack water here would have been the Blue Mountain Dam, which is way downriver where locks 28 and 29 were, and that's where we were at a few weeks back exploring that area. That's the next closest dam to this area. It's quite a bit a ways downriver, which means it must have been a pretty substantial dam to create enough slack water to get all the way back up to Port Clinton. Do you see what I mean? I think this is sandstone, which is why the lines would have been so easily carved into it. Again, could be wrong. I don't know. I am just speculating. But there's 2 locks here. Again, this was all covered in brush the last time I was here. Every time I was here. They've recently cleared this out. Probably has something to do with the celebration. 200 years. So this is our other lock. This is the canal right here. This has all been backfilled. So you have 2 separate sections, 2 outlet locks right here. Possibly a house sitting right in between both. So we're outletting into the river right here, but we also are still in the canal right here. This would actually be inside the lock. And the outlet lock itself. Such a cool area. So now in Port Clinton, there are coal docks here. So I think that's going to be our last video, trying and show you where those used to be. So again, here is our outlet lock, 1 of 2. Outlet lock 27. That's a shame that that's broke, because that's a pretty neat bottle. Yeah, Deb, I think I see what you're talking about with the combination of stones. Okay, so let's go take a look at this plaque. From what I understand, this is brand new. So the Port Clinton lock, built 1820, enlarged 1846 by the Schuylkill Navigation Company for the 108-mile coal-carrying slack-water canal system, Port Carbon to Philadelphia. So I believe they're going to be doing some sort of dedication out here for the commemoration of the 200-year anniversary. That was some really bad English there. Anyway, all right, so we're going to wrap this up, and now we're going to try to figure out the coal docks. All right, folks, thank you.